So this is my team, me, Adama Mbai, Eva Ilring, and Marie-Hélène Daba. You can change the slide, please. So we are, here is the framing questions. We start with these questions on what is the overall picture of the gender equality through social profile scoring, which is a tool I'm going to describe further. And are there special features related to specific subdomains of specific value chains? And this is I'm going to explain also in the next slides. And then we try to go beyond the VCA4D methodology and try to understand what are the key points highlighted by the value chain findings, by the VCA4D findings, and how they are reflected in the literature. So trying to combine or to contrast what we found in the value chains analysis and the literature on gender. Next slide, please. So the social analysis in the VCA4D methodology has 6 domains. Gender equality is one of these domains. The other are working conditions, land and water rights, food and nutrition security, social capital, and living conditions. And there are 5 gender equality subdomains. I'm not going to describe them because they will come after when I go more in depth with our analysis. These gender equality domains are divided in 17 questions. And we took all the 36 studies that were done in June 2022. So we adopted a stepwise approach. So the first step was to do a statistical analysis of the expert scores using the social profile tool. Then the expert scores were combined with the narratives of the experts when replying to the 17 questions, and then the lessons learned were consolidated with the literature review. Please, next slide. So here you see the radar chart, the diagram that was also presented by other presenters. So gender equality is one of the domains of the social analysis. And when we speak about gender, we also took some information from the other domains of the social analysis. The scores go from high, substantial, moderate, low, and not at all or not applicable. High meaning high respect for women's rights, substantial, okay, substantial respect for women's rights. Moderate and low, of course, moderate and low respect for women's rights, and not at all meaning women at a higher risk. So, no, don't change. What happened? Next, please. Next. Okay, so from this first statistical analysis of the expert scores concerning this scale, we found that there was an extensive use of the range of scores, which was very good. There were no empty cells when the experts has filled these scores. There is a high negative assessment of the gender equality because, as you see, there are 65% scores that are in moderate and not at all. The experts indicated moderate and not at all in 65% of the questions. Intermediate scores are, as you see, more frequently used, which means sometimes that the experts, maybe they didn't have enough information, but anyway, they have chosen intermediate scores more than the more extreme scores. We found there is a gender bias in the assessment. There are women scoring with worse scores, and male experts a tendency to choose better scores. There is also the expert bias. Some experts, they prefer extreme scores, but majority went to intermediate scores. Next slide, please. So the best situations, they were related to the participation of women in the value chain and the management of incomes, of their incomes. And worse situations were mainly inequality of workloads, inequality of land rights, hardship of women's work, women's access to other resources, and land being one of the most important resources, but also because women don't have access to land tenure, they don't have access to credit. And so this, when speaking about the other resources, credit is one of the most important situations. So for what we found is that partially the gender equality outcomes are linked to specific types are not very much linked with specific types of commodity. We found also that there is not a very high country effect, but even so, so we couldn't find a very strong relation between the gender equality and the type of commodity, of the type of value chain. We also didn't find a very high relationship with the country effect. Anyway, it's stronger the country effect than the commodity value chain effect, and this is due to the importance of the national context, the cultural aspects, the level of development of the country, and also the public policies. But we realized that gender equality indicators cannot be taken independently, because in the same value chain, there are high scores for some indicators and low scores for other indicators. For example, high women autonomy in managing their income is combined with low access to credit and land and high workload. So what we found is that we could not define a value chain in terms of gender rights as having equal scores for all the indicators. They are bad scores are combined with good scores. Next slide, please. Okay. So the first step was the statistical analysis I just described. The second step was using the scores given by the expert and some of the narratives in 23 value chains that were aggregated according to commodities. And here is the aggregation. And again, looking at the 5 subdomains and the 17 questions. Next slide, please. So in this step 2 of our analysis, we found that for the first subdomain, which is related to women economic activities, women play an active role in the value chain in 1/3 of the studies, but there is a risk of women being excluded or being denied access to the value chain. And this is very much related to the mechanization. Women tasks are done mostly manually. They don't have access to technology that makes their task less hard. So if these tasks are mechanized, there is a risk that the men take control of their specific activities. The second subdomain of the gender equality analysis was women access to resources. And this is very important indicator because women do not have access to important resources, particularly land and credit. And this is the greatest constraints of their involvement in the value chains. The item that have better scores were women access to extension services. So it seems to create more opportunities for women. As for women decision making, there are higher scores than in the other items in this subdomain. So women earn they earn independent income. They also have good scores for women having control in organization of their work and also control over their income. And this is very related to women autonomy within the value chains, because there is a gender division of labor, and women have some tasks that are specialized, in which they are specialized. Next slide, please. As for leadership and empowerment, women moderately or lowly involved in groups, trade unions, and farmers' organizations, but they are not leaders, and most of this engagement is related to their participation in certain specialized activities. As for territorial power and political decision-making, it's considered by the experts very low or not influential. And also it scored moderate or low for women speaking in public. And for the hardship of work, very bad. It's very bad for women when compared to men, with, like it was referred in the previous presentation, 42% of the experts choose not at all for women hardship of women domestic work. Okay, next slide. So lessons learned, an equal division of labor.
5 minutes.
Okay, okay. So an equal division of labor, women daily burden and reduce access to. Okay, an equal division of labor means women reduce access to education, and meaning also lack of autonomy. This is one of the important lessons learned. The higher the education level of women, the greater their ability to influence decision-making process. Gendered occupation in agriculture and agricultural related activities with women with limited access to labor-saving technologies. It was mentioned, men have greater access to technologies that alleviate their work burden than women. Women access to land is mediated by men. Generally, women own small lands and of poor quality. Women's rights to land are usually mediated through a man relative. Smaller plots and poor quality land for women. Like in Cocoa, Cameroon, it said women never own their fields, especially when they are profitable. Women agriculture holders are not present at consultation with investors, and when they are present, they have no voice. Okay, next slide. Also limited access to land means women's limited access to credit, women's higher engagement in food production. We could see that women are more engaged in food production, but not food production that is commercial, normally food crops, gardens, rather than cash crops, due to the responsibility of ensuring food for their households. There is a problem of women time poverty as a result of their participation in commercial crops. Women in agriculture commercial crops, such as coffee, cocoa, and banana, for instance, have lower participation in training, decision-making, and income generation activities. And in Tanzania, coffee value chain, is even called time poverty. Women marital status, this was something that it was in many reports, various reports. Single women, polygamy and widowhood, single women as head of households as a result of male national international migration. Also many widows related to civil war situations or diseases, and polygamy was referred in some reports not being legal polygamy, not be cultural polygamy, but women being dependent of men. And if we see that women are the workforce for many commercial productions, it creates some big interrogation what this polygamy really means. So next slide, please. So some implication for decision makers. This is almost last slide, I think. So national legislation on women's rights, including national policies targeted specifically to women, and in some cases through dedicating government bodies are in place. Most reports start saying there is legislation on women's rights. Despite this law, women are not protected because of social cultural norms impeding law enforcement, combined with their lack of knowledge and of their entitlement to these rights, and also of this institution, the government institution, that don't make the laws, don't apply the laws. So important to engage political commitment in broadening the legislation to cover more spheres of women's and girls' lives, and to assure that these legal instruments application is guaranteed. Need for the identification of empower and disempowered drivers in what is considered a situation. Women are suffering for gender-specific climate change risk. Women are gaining some agency when they become widows or they are single. So there are examples of sub-value chains controlled by women and their networks, reducing women unequal situations. So there are drivers, positive and negative drivers. So it's a dynamic process. Next slide. So there is a need for gender disaggregated national statistics, data, and gender information to inform gender analysis and influence policy decisions. And there is also the need, and we found in reports such as VCA4D and the indicators that are defined in the methodology, to take the gender into account in the other spheres, not just in social analysis, because normally we speak about actors of the value chains, but they are gender neutral, or there is like a hidden gender definition. Thank you.